Christopher Nolan is the man that inspired me to pick up a camera and shoot a film of my own. This is a man that has made a handful of masterpieces. He has not made a bad movie yet, and I've seen all of them twice, and Dunkirk literally came out less than 24 hours ago, and he always seems to deliver, which is insane because even a lot of our favorite directors still make a bad movie every once in a while. Like Tarantino made Death Proof, some people like it, I personally just think it really sucks. Spielberg made Jurassic Park 2, and the list goes on, but the bottom line is this: it's so hard to not make a bad movie, yet Christopher Nolan somehow manages to pull it off. I've already reviewed Nolan's filmography on my channel before, and I wanted to do something different than just a normal Dunkirk review, so I thought I would rank all of his films from my least favorite to my favorite, and this is one of the hardest lists I've ever had to make in my entire life. I'll tell you straight up, 10 through 7 were pretty easy for me to rank, but once we get past that, it was so hard for me to order these movies, it's unreal. I think 1 through 6 are masterpieces, 7 is a really, really amazing movie, and 8 through 10 are really fucking good. So if you think I dislike a movie just because of its spot on the list, then I'm sorry, you're wrong. I like all these movies, that's the bottom line. But for now, I'm gonna give you my ranking of Christopher Nolan's 10 feature-length films. Okay, The Dark Knight Rises, I think we could all agree, is not necessarily anyone's favorite Christopher Nolan movie. It's not bad, there's some good things in it. Tom Hardy was great, Anne Hathaway was actually probably the best addition. I liked how much they emphasized the character of Bruce Wayne compared to Batman, and I also love the ending. The ending is still one of my favorites of the entire decade. But there's just a lot that's really lacking with the movie. A lot of it, especially the second half, feels like a really basic superhero movie, which is really nothing like the first two Christopher Nolan Batman movies. Also, a lot of the dialogue was kind of cringy, like the whole Robin scene, and a lot of the plane dialogue from the opening scene is kind of cringy too. I still enjoy it, it's still a good movie, but definitely his weakest. Insomnia is one of Christopher Nolan's most underrated films. It seems like not a lot of people really watch this one for some reason, but it's still pretty damn good. It's a great mystery. There's a lot of drama in here that I don't really want to spoil if you haven't seen it yet, but if you haven't seen it, you should check it out because it's pretty sweet. Al Pacino gives one of his best performances of his career in my opinion. Robin Williams is also fantastic. I've only seen this one twice, and I can honestly say that's probably enough for me. I don't really have a desire to watch this multiple times like a lot of the other films in his filmography. But if you haven't seen Insomnia, I highly recommend it. It's not one of my favorites from Nolan, but it's still such a solid crime thriller that needs to be seen if you haven't seen it. While Insomnia is underrated, I think Following is definitely the most underappreciated gem in Christopher Nolan's filmography. This thing is so good and so impressive for basically a no-budget feature. He has interesting characters. You could tell straight up this is Nolan from the way he tells the story in a non-linear way. Although this is probably the weakest of his non-linear stories, it's still incredible to see him as a young director just have that concept already established in his head. It's a movie I throw on every once in a while because it really inspires me as a wannabe independent filmmaker, and it just proves you don't need a huge budget, you don't need $1 million. This man literally had like $5 or $6 grand, and now he's Christopher Nolan. So if you haven't seen Following, I highly recommend it. You gotta check it out if you haven't. Dunkirk came out yesterday, but I made sure to see it twice just so I could really solidify where I was gonna put it on the list. And I'm really happy I saw it a second time in IMAX because this thing really blew my mind the second time. The first time I watched it, I was like, yeah, that was a really, really good movie. But when you watch it a second time, you catch up on so many little details that you most likely missed on the first viewing. I love the way the three stories were cut together. I thought that was awesome. Hans Zimmer's score mixed with the literally perfect sound design and the way it's mixed with the score, it's just all it's so good. This is the most hardcore PG-13 movie you will ever see in your entire life. And it just worked. You didn't need blood or gore to get the tension that was built in this movie. The only thing I didn't really dig about Dunkirk was the characters. They're all fine, but there's never like a really good character here. The acting was good. Harry Styles actually kind of surprised me that he was actually the best one in the movie. But Nolan has a filmography where every other film in his filmography has amazing characters, and Dunkirk is literally the only exception to that, which I just can't justify making it one of his best because of that. Because when you make films, you start to realize the most important part of making a film is always the characters. And like I said, they were fine here. They definitely served their purpose, but I didn't think anyone was deliberately interesting. That was definitely the point. I'm obviously not blind to that. It was intentional that no one wanted to focus on everything else besides the character development here. But that being said, when I watch a movie, I'm watching a movie most likely to find amazing characters. I love every aspect of filmmaking, but characters will always be the most important part, and Dunkirk just didn't really have that, and that's why I put it at number 7 on the list. Batman Begins is a fucking masterpiece. Like, I always loved it, but when I rewatched it a couple days ago, I got goosebumps. I got goosebumps at so many points of this movie. It is the best superhero origin story of all time. It is easily the best reboot of all time. Hans Zimmer's score here might be one of my favorites of all time. I want to say like top 3 or 4. It literally gives me goosebumps at so many points. The cast is one of the best ever assembled in film history, and it only gets better as you add additional characters in The Dark Knight. And I love the feel that Gotham has in this movie. It's a very different feel than what it has in the next 2 movies. This one's just like super ghetto and grimy and gross, and it just felt so cool. Batman Begins is the second best superhero movie of all time, and since we didn't bring up another superhero movie, you probably already know what my favorite one is, but we'll get to that in a bit. Interstellar is definitely Nolan's most divisive film. I understand where people are coming from when they don't like it, but to me this is his most emotional film, and that is why I love it so much. Yeah, there's a little bit of cheesy dialogue every once in a while. Love is quantifiable is pretty fucking stupid, but the way certain things are handled, the way everything is just put together is so unbelievable here that I just can't express my love for Interstellar enough. I could count on one hand how many times a movie has made me cry, and Interstellar makes me cry at 2 specific scenes every single time I watch it, and that's just unheard of for me. Hans Zimmer's score here is also probably like top 10 for me. It's unbelievable and gives me goosebumps every single time, and the effects are literally probably top 5 best I've ever seen. The way it combines the practical with the very minimal CGI was unbelievable, and Interstellar is easily, in my opinion, one of Christopher Nolan's masterpieces. In Memento, Christopher Nolan tells the best non-linear story ever put on film. There's a lot of great movies that use the gimmick, but no one has used it to its fullest potential like Nolan does with Memento. I have seen this movie before a couple times, and when I rewatched it a week ago, my mind was still getting one of the best workouts it could possibly get, because I was just trying to keep up with every little detail that was going on. And that's coming from someone that has seen the movie multiple times before. But it's not just a gimmick that makes Memento good. The actual story is truly incredible. The characters are so investing and so interesting the entire time. There's just so many scenes that stick out and so many images that are burned in my mind with this movie. And the whole concept of this dude just writing fucking tattoos on him with clues to who raped and murdered his wife is unreal. That is such a cool concept and so visually satisfying. When someone says this is his best movie, I totally get where they're coming from. This is like one of my favorite films of all time, but I just like 3 other ones more. That's how fucking good Christopher Nolan is at making movies. The Prestige is one of the darkest films I've ever seen, just because it contains these 2 guys that are just obsessed with constantly wanting to one-up each other, and they do it in the darkest way possible, but it also all revolves around fucking magic. If someone tells you they think The Prestige is a bad movie, don't ever listen to their opinion again. Film is subjective, you could like what you want to like, but if you think The Prestige is a bad movie, then you're just fucking wrong. The way the story is told is amazing. The places where the story goes is mind-blowing. The characters are so good, it's unreal. The acting is phenomenal. This is easily one of Christopher Nolan's best films to date, and if you haven't seen it, you're really missing out, and you have to go watch it ASAP. I loved Inception so much when I saw it that it actually inspired me to check out online how it was made. It just completely blew my mind. The world Nolan creates in Inception is the coolest I've probably ever seen in my entire life. This concept of like going into dreams and stealing people's ideas or implanting ideas into their head, going into dreams within dreams and dreams, like it was just all so much to take in, and every time I watch this movie I still take in something new, and I've seen this movie probably 20 plus times. Hans Zimmer's time track literally kills me every time it comes on at the end of the movie. All the characters are super interesting, all the acting is phenomenal, all the production design, the CGI is some of the best I've ever seen, and the way it combines with the practical effects is so satisfying. This is another one of those movies when people call it overrated, I just can't comprehend where they're coming from. This film is on a whole nother level of good, and it's to this day one of the best, absolute best films I've ever seen. I saw The Dark Knight in IMAX opening week in 2008, and that was the first time in my life where I walked out of the movie and said, that is Hands down the best movie I've ever seen in my entire life. And to this day, I still have not said that about a film I walked out of a theater for. And I started to wonder, is it just me at that age? I hadn't really known too much about filmmaking. Was it actually like the best thing I've ever seen? And while I go back and forth what my favorite movie is, I just rewatched The Dark Knight the other day for probably like the 85th time, and it almost made me cry. Not because anything sad was happening or anything like that, but it almost made me cry because I've never seen so many amazing things and so much passion and so much care that could be felt through a summer blockbuster. The reason I hold summer blockbusters to a certain level of high expectations is because of this movie. I could tell you everything that's great about it, but you already know everything that's great about it. If someone tells you The Dark Knight sucks, tell them they're wrong and they have to go rewatch it again because they obviously missed something. And it's become like the cool thing to hate on The Dark Knight for some reason, but I could genuinely say I've never seen a better blockbuster in my entire life.